this is the best crowd ever because you're here and you want to use PACs to save all of our babies. So I want to have a talk with Rashawn because he's a really gifted therapist. I'm a gifted therapist and have worked with kids that are, you remember in Psych where you heard the story of a kid who was raised as a dog? Okay, I had one of those. And he licked my hand and smelt my hand when I first met him, and he was used to eating his food out of the dog bowl. By the way, he's okay. He's about 35 now. He's about twice as big as me, and he could bench press me. And sometimes when he just had a fit and I just had to hold him, I thought, wow, I managed to do that. Yes, ma'am.
I'm so sorry.
What?
We're being told we have to get
Okay, all right.
Nobody
Okay.
can't hear.
Yes, now we can. I hope everybody can see me. So we're going to talk about PACs everywhere. Now, some of you I know are PACs groupies out here. So PACs means peace, productivity, health, and happiness. And the PACs series of stuff are the single most scientifically proven strategies to prevent DSM disorders at a population level. So we will never, ever be able to treat our way out of this problem. Yes, we need good therapy. I went through some similar things to Rashawn, not at the same level or difficulties, but I was a witness. If you've ever seen Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and Robert and Elizabeth Taylor, I was not an imaginary boy or child. I was a real boy who saw and heard every single bit of that. In the hotel rooms, their smoking, their drunkenness. When I was a young man, in 13, I got $100 for one of my paintings, which I'll show later. And I used that to bail them out of jail. So I'm aware of all of the terrible things that can happen. And my commitment to you, this state, our country, and the world, that we in the United States and other countries have some of the single best science to improve mental well-being and even reverse mental illness at a population level. So Tikkun Olam is Hebrew for repairing the world. And what you can see here is that's my great-grandfather. And that's my dad at age 9. And my great-grandfather was a freed slave. You sort of see it, but you don't see it. And he was freed when he was 13. He was a soldier in the Civil War. He homesteaded out in Dewey County. Some of you, anybody here from Oklahoma? Okay, so Dewey County is way out there, and there's not much there. And on the surface of you can't grow much, but it did turn out there was something valuable below the ground. And fortunately, because of the way he structured, my grandfather and his son structured that will, that became mine as a young man when I was starting to build all of this. And I didn't use that money for frivolous things. I used it to build what we now call PAC's Good Behavior Game. And I have helped in that message of repairing the world. And I want to talk to you about why that's so important. There I am at about 5, and I'm wandering around. I've always been a kid who was completely unafraid of strangers. And I would just go talk to people. I walked to Chiquita Park. I knocked on the door, and this Isaac Asimov was a writer. And I got to meet him, and he would talk to me about space and things. I met another lady, and she helped me. And then I met a man who fixed my toys, and he sort of made a bargain with me. When he fixed my toys, he went downstairs to the basement to fix them, but that was also where his hidden liquor cabinet was. So we had an arrangement. I wouldn't say anything to his wife about the liquor bottles as he fixed my toys. And later on, if I show you this next slide. So this next slide, come back to that. So that one of these slides, I'll show you something else. I became a U.S. Capitol page at age 17, and I worked for Jerry Ford and Bob Dole. And the man who fixed my toys is the man who wrote a letter of reference to those men who got me that position. And you can actually see me at the State of the Union address in 1966, standing under the portrait of Lafayette. That was the most amazing thing. But I also want to talk about, when we're talking about ticum olim, we have to think about repairing the harms. So we all know about what happened to the disposition of the indigenous peoples leaving on the shores on the East Coast and then moving to here. And now we have these people here who were displaced and still have difficulties. So we have to think about long-term historic harms, which actually can be embedded in our genes through the epigenetic mechanisms. So some of these epigenetic genes are listening to the environment. And who is the major predator of humans? Other humans. And who is the major protector of those children from those people? Other humans. So we're always fiddling with this particular issue. Now, this is my art exhibit when I was in 7th grade, and it was in the Great Bend newspaper. And a lady came up and she asked me, she said, "What do you want to be when you grow up, Dennis?" And I said, "Well, I want to be a scientist, a political leader, and an artist." And you kind of see the arty farty piece, right, just here in my presence. But the man bought a painting for me for $100, and I used that for a whole bunch of very good things. Then I got a Science Fair Award and the National Science Foundation Junior Fellowship to do my first randomized control trial on the effects of a protective electromagnetic shield against cosmic bombardment of Drosophila madagascar as a proxy for launching astronauts into space. Long story. So this is Mr. Ford, Mr. Dole, and their assistants to me. These are the mentors that I have had in my life. And there's this wonderful thing that happened on April 5 in 1999. I was in Peace Magazine for a hero as a teacher for reducing violent crime and violence against children in schools and places based on my funded research with CDC. That was on April the 5th, and something happened less than 2 weeks after that. Anybody might remember what happened to April 14 on 1999? Columbine. So when I got out, I was at a school building and I turned on the radio and I heard this, and I knew that in a very short time I would be summoned to DC, because our study, the Peace Builder study, was the first violence prevention randomized trial to reduce violent injuries and assaults in schools. Now, we did have some guns in there, but kids talked about guns and knives. So I went there and I got to talk about my work, and then some other people talked about their work. And this fellow, Shepard Kellum, he started talking about his thing and the results. And he's a little on the spectrum, like some of us who were academics. And so, you know, the data were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so I raised my, little eager beaver hand and I said, "Oh, Dr. Kellum, what did you use to create all those results?" The good behavior game. The good behavior game was invented at the University of Kansas in the child development program that I was a PhD student, and my PhD was using the same active ingredients in the good behavior game but to protect children from pedestrian injuries and being hurt by cars crossing the street. So, wow, we could do something that answered the question, how do we teach children to use their gas pedal to do things? And how do we teach them to use their brake pedal for not doing things? And also how to teach them to drive and steer, perhaps toward or perhaps away from certain things. Now, hold that in motion. I want you to realize what is happening in America. Has anybody noticed that a lot more kids and young adults and even adults have a mental illness? Has anyone not noticed that? Yeah. It's real. So look at this. So you can see these rates. And so 1936 to 1945, about women their age about 65, about 25% of citizens then had a major depression. But as you move up earlier and earlier, you see like in 1966 and 1975. So now it's about 25% of the kids at age 25 have one of those disorders. Now it's this straight. So we heard today a little bit about the spread, the epidemic of psychiatric disorders. That implies in some way it's infectious, but not necessarily by germs or virus, but it is socially contagious. It's also can be socially protected. And if you think it's just parents who are responsible for this, that would be dead wrong. There are many other forces that are happening that are creating this epidemic of mental emotional disorders. So this is in 2010, this was published. So 40.4 million children in 2009 were taking psychotropic medications. That was more than half of our children are taking those. And of course, that makes drug companies quite wealthy. But in order to be well, what do you have to do? Essentially pay every day, or somebody pays every day to compensate this. The question is, this is sort of like, any of you get your polio shots in the 1950s besides me? Okay, there's several of us. Remember how terrified we were of polio? And I was living in Phoenix, and we were forbidden to go in the swimming pool. You know, and that was a curse not to be able to go in the swimming pool because AC was relatively rare in the 50s in Phoenix. So boy, howdy, when it was announced that it was working, all of us kids were like, Mommy, Daddy, when can we get the shot? When can we get the shot? That's probably the first time in the history that children were begging for a shot. Now, here in Oklahoma, so we've got, these are some of the numbers that are affecting our state. This is the core of some of these things. So we're having fewer children, more children with rising mental, emotional, and behavioral disorders, and fewer skills for a good life. There's an unfortunate thing about humans. The major predator of humans is humans. The major protector of said humans is humans. So we had an infinite display just before this meeting of the demonstration of this paradox. This young man spoke about his experience and the predation that he experienced. And now he is one of the protectors and has been protected from that event. That therapist turned his life around. Question is, how can we possibly continue all of this just by treatment? We can't. So what do? So PAC strategies are simple supports and practices to better our children's lives. So if you were with my husband sometime, you would notice that I read journal articles in medical journals and psychiatric journals on the beach. Now, that must be some sort of strange addiction on my part. I don't know if there's any therapy for that, but if you find that out, please call my husband and tell him he'll be happy to pay for that process. So what are the daily actions and events in classrooms worsen the risk of lifetime problems? So some of you done a direct observation in the classrooms? So we do direct observations. We count disturbing, disruptive, inattentive, problematic behaviors per minute. When we first started that with our Title I schools, our average was about 50 disturbing, disruptive, and inattentive behaviors per 15 minutes. That's pushing 10 years ago. You know what it's like now? It's 100 is baseline. So no wonder the teachers are brittle, depressed, anxious, angry, and inefficient. So we have to do something about that. And you can't medicate, nor should we medicate all of the kids. So what are the daily actions? What practical things can we do to promote happier, healthier, and more peaceful and productive children? So are we going to give them a curriculum? Today, class, we're going to give you a curriculum on being happy. So let me tell you what happiness is. Okay, so they say, when I eat chocolate cake, okay, yes. But that's not getting at the process, is it? It's not about being in a state of well-being. So we want our kids to be healthier. In our study funded by CDC, which was our first major traction on this idea. It wasn't the good behavior game, but it had all the components of the good behavior game of peer reinforcement for each other, signals for transitions, the children being able to articulate what would be appropriate in each transition. But PAX-GBG added to that by the children learning to say what they wanted to see, hear, feel, and do less of. So we put those two things together. That's what sort of PAX-GBG. Now, so now we see this thing. So how do we do this? The daily actions, these daily simple practices like the harmonica for transition, like PAX hands, PAX feet, writing tootle notes, peer-to-peer tootle notes, all those things, these tiny little units of behavioral influence, immediately within 3 to 4 weeks will drop the problematic behavior in a classroom by half. You would think that they've been given drugs at this point. They have. It's called PAX. Then if you start to play the PAX good behavior game, it even gets better. So we're talking about really powerful things. So this is the first study in the world of the good behavior game. This was done in a town just of 300 people in just south of Lawrence, Kansas. And this was done by a graduate student and a first-year teacher who was recruited in October to take over the class after 2 other teachers had quit. And this woman, Muriel Sanders, had no experience whatsoever teaching. You know, they just hired her and said she was a warm body. She was in tears for weeks, and she finally told her husband, who was in grad school with one of the more prominent professors at the University of Kansas, Montrose Wolf, who was also he was on my committee. So he went and talked to her, and Mont said to her, he said, well, Harriet, when are the children good? maybe at recess, but not in the classroom. So maybe we could create a game that would create a willingness for the children to create goodness in the classroom. So we'll talk more about the game, but what you see here in this publication is they implemented the good behavior game in math period first. They're direct observers and they are actually counting the problematic behaviors in the classroom. What you see on the first line is a major reduction of those problematic behaviors across the kids. Then you say, so we're going to stop and see what happens. Okay, so then that problematic behavior goes back up. So any intelligent human being sees that, what would they say? Let's turn on that game some more. So they did, and those problematic behaviors went down. You see then a reading period, they replicated this also in the same way. This is one of the most cited articles in behavioral science in the world. It has been replicated many, many, many times. And now we have randomized control group studies at not only at Baltimore, in Canada, other places here in the United States, in Europe, in Sweden, in Estonia, in Ireland, and Scotland, and in North-South Wales, Australia. So this is something that is a natural phenomenon. Now, one of the questions is it possible? Now, if I walked up to somebody and said, did you know that we could reduce DSM disorders in a semester, in a whole province? Just think about the foolishness of even posing that as an idea. I mean, you all see what's on television. You know, ask your doctor about whatever medication it is for mental disturbances, illnesses, etc. So we used an instrument called the Strengths and Difficulties Questionnaire, which is used nationally to norm how well our kids are psychologically and behaviorally. And that's really useful, that it measures DSM outcomes. So what we were able to do in this study of about 5,000 first grade 1 kids, as they say in Canada, we only had 2 places that were not involved. So what we see here is that on the right, high problem students moving to low risk. That is an effect size of at least 1 out of 100. These are kids that are really tightly wound. Now we see high problem students moving to moderate risk. So the blue are the kids who got PACS, and the red are the kids who were in control conditions. So now we see with the moderate problem risk kids that effect size is 1 out of 1,000 possibility that it would have that level of effect. There is no psychotropic medication for young children that has an effect size with a significance level of 0.001. And by the way, this is independently evaluated. Now, moderate problem students moving to low risk. That's low risk means they're just an ordinary kid who sometimes does stupid things that make you pissed off. And you try not to show that. So that's 1 out of 1,000 too. So there are fewer conduct problems, fewer emotional problems, less hyperactivity, fewer peer problems, and a better pro-social skills. Now you're going to say, pro-social skills? That's nice. So we have that big study back on Hopkins. So it turns out the major ingredient to reduce suicidality in our study is peer reinforcement for pro-social behavior. You wouldn't think that normally. Now, so for those of you who have seen something about PACS, it is made up of very small units of behavioral influence. We call those kernels, evidence-based kernels, sorry. So the vision and all of these things, and they are affecting things in different way. The left quadrant here is about creating psychological flexibility and safety, because kids that are prone to risks of DSM disorders are not cognitively or emotionally flexible. They get stuck. And then their brain, the little gyroscope in the brain, it just starts spinning faster and faster and faster, and they just can't move. Now, high problem students moving to moderate risk, again, 1 out of 1,000. And high problem kids moving to low risk, 1 out of 100. I'd bank on that any day of the week if I had a bunch of messed up kids in my school system. All of these are replicable, and we have systematic replications, which are different from direct replications. These systematic replications are in different settings, different peoples, sometimes slightly different procedures, density of rate of implementation, but we're always able to see similar types of results. Oops. Now, this is why the governments in the United States are writing checks. So we've had a nice conversation with Oklahoma, and they're looking like maybe we're going to do this bigger. So Carmen is our vice president of Texas, and one day we got a call from Texas, and this lady says, we want to do PACS good behavior game and PACS tools at a population level in Texas. I'm like, is this a practical joke? Texas? By the way, most of the states in the United States that are funding this at a population level are Republican states, which is interesting. So what happens, you can see what happens with 2 years or 1 or 2 years. These are the things that we're able to show. And by the way, this is Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore, Maryland is you do not want to walk on the streets at night. And even during the daytime, you got to be careful. So college attendance of these boys went up 107%. College attendance by girls, 52%. By the way, the confound here is we actually reduced pregnancies in the kids, but some of the girls still had babies. But it did have an effect on getting them to higher education. We're seeing an increase in high school graduation for both boys and girls. Now, here's the parts that when we're talking about behavioral stuff. So there's a 26% reduction from running the good behavior game just in first grade, a 26% lifetime less use of special ed at all. That's a high ticket cost that just keeps rolling up in our school districts. Then violent crime among highly aggressive boys, reduction by 32%. And then alcohol abuse by boys and girls, minus 30%. And 40% reduction of all psychiatric services of all boys, 50% reduction of any drug by boys, 51% of reduction in suicidal thoughts by boys and girls, a 57% reduction in educational services for boys, a 60% reduction in lifetime antisocial personality disorder in high aggressive boys. Antisocial personality disorder is not normally thought to be malleable, but apparently it is, at least at this early level. And we're still following these kids. We are now checking them at age 35. And we actually have data on their children now, which is amazing. So regular smoking is reduced, and aggressive boys, et cetera. Now, this net savings for society for this is about $10,500 per kid. So when we talk about doing PACS in a classroom, the teacher's bag of goodies is about $300. And then for the training, it's about, depending on how many people, you spread it out, 150, maybe 200 if you've got a smaller group or something. Pardon? Yeah, they don't know. I mean, teacher doesn't know typically how much it is, but so you divide that by 25 kids for something that does this in your classroom. There is no way that a counselor could affect those types of changes. We'll get to some other ones as well. I want to show you, we have recently undertaken the implementation of PACS GBG in New South Wales. So we got this weird call in December of 2009. And I was like, New South Wales, Australia wants to do this? And then Carmen and I, we find out they have big plans. They have big plans. And they were wonderful to work with, the best people we've ever worked with in terms of contracting. We put up we were able to see the screens, we were able to comment on each other, and they would go, oh, yeah, we understand what you're saying. And then if they explain something they needed, they say, oh, yeah, we see what you need, what you need there. So here's the Aussie accent, and you will hear one of the Australians with that really sharp, high-pitched accent. So it's a cute one.
We had a lot of students that didn't have a great deal of self-worth. Engagement was a problem. We needed something specifically for the classroom.
What I liked about the PACS Good Behaviour game is the changes that it would bring for children. A kernel is anything that influences a positive change in behaviour. Lining up and transitioning into the classroom, the teacher talks about PACS hands and feet.
Can you hear it still?
I love your hands by your side, PACS leaders.
Maybe a
From the
little louder.
beginning, so it gives predictable limitations around what behaviour is to be expected.
To make sure we have PACS hands and feet, you will need to tuck your chairs in, and you need to make sure that you are very careful with your friends.
PACS leaders, not only does the adult identify leaders, but children are identifying themselves and they're identifying others. It promotes co-regulation because everybody's working together. It reduces conflict and negative emotions. PACS vision is fundamental in creating a nurturing environment. The teacher works with the students to collaborate again. What do we want to see more of and what do we want to see less of? The vision is used throughout the day, throughout activities to remind children of just how we're going to operate in our classroom. PACS Quiet, using the harmonica to bring a quietness to the classroom. So once the teacher plays with the harmonica.
Well done, Yellow. Eyes to me.
The children just put their fingers up for peace. And it's great to see all children stop and know exactly what to do. PACS Quiet is about creating a nurturing environment. PACS Voices is used to set expectations around voice volume.
When we are using our voices in the classroom, we need to use all different types of voices. So when we are using a 0 centimetre voice, we don't have any sound. Can you say hello to me when we are using a 0 centimetre voice? Very good. Now, when we are using a 3 centimetre voice, it is a whisper. Can you say hello to me in a 3 centimetre voice? Very good. We might use that one when we're sounding out a word or if we're asking a friend for a pencil. Now, sometimes we need to use a normal talking voice, and that is a 1 metre voice. Can you please say hello to me in a 1 metre voice? Hello. Hello. Oh, that's good. So that's when we might be in group work or if we're talking to our friends just normally. And then we have a 3 metre voice. Now we use a 3 metre voice when we're outside or if we're doing something a bit funny in the classroom. Can you all say hello to me in a 3 metre voice? Very good.
PACS sticks, the names are chosen randomly if they're wanting a leader or they're wanting someone to go on to do a task or be in charge of something. So children know that they have an opportunity for their name to come up.
Look at that word that we're going to need describing words. Levi, 1. All right. Ellie, Isaac, Rocco.
They see straight away there's fairness. So everybody has to sit in that moment. They learn to self-regulate. And that's, again, a great opportunity to learn about those emotions that come and go. Okay, not okay is a visual that can sit on the desk. The red is not okay and the green is okay. While the teacher is moving around the room, it is a non-verbal prompt for the students to check their behaviour.
It's really
Beat the
useful
time
in
it
the
increases
classroom
on task behaviour
them
because
to be
children
able to
have to
communicate
finish the task
non-verbally.
within a given time.
I think I'm giving you too much time here. All right, show me your PACS leaders. Let's go. We beat the timer. All right, we better pause it.
They know that they've got to work towards that timer. So it also reduces problematic behaviour because children aren't lingering or waiting around. Granny Wacky Prizes is all around self-regulation and celebrating that self-regulation. It's really about celebrating the packs in you. It can be just used randomly very quickly within the day, pulling a silly face. It might be standing on the spot and jumping for 10 seconds.
All tables have 3 or less flames, so we are going to do a Granny Wacky's prize. We have a 30-second nap. All right, so pencils down, and you may have a nap on your desk for 30 seconds. Off you go.
The
That's a
most
good one.
important point around the Granny Wacky Prizes is that it's intrinsically motivated. They're in a moment of excitement because they've had a win and they're doing something different in the class, and then it just ends.
Very good, Yellow. All right, let's keep working.
The
That's their
ability
team
to
name.
chop and change, the Granny Wacky Prizes does that very well. Toodles is a made-up word. The opposite is tattle. And a toodle is, again, reinforcing and celebrating where children have demonstrated self-regulation in a classroom. Students can also identify children that they feel deserve a toodle.
For trying to complete sentences on our own.
Oh, well done, Harper. Good on you. We'll have to give that to Harper. Harper, here you go. Thank you for being PAX leader.
It's recognition for being a PAX person.
I'd just like to see it being throughout so that all the students know about PAX leaders and everybody wants to be a PAX leader. PAX is peace, productivity, health and happiness. And those 4 elements are what we want to see in our classroom. But beyond the classroom, it's what we want our young students to have as they move into high school and then through further life.
The PAX Good Behaviour game is lifelong learning for children. I see that it empowers children. I see that it gives them an opportunity to be accountable and make smart choices around their own learning and their own behaviour. They learn to be part of a team. They learn to be a leader. They're recognised and they're acknowledged.
Thank you, New South Wales government. So some of you work in Title I schools, right? Okay. So Title I schools typically have the kids with the most adverse childhood experiences, typically. That's not absolutely true because there are rich people who do bad things to their children as well. They just have more money to cover it. So one of the things that happened after the awards in 2010, the director of the health, the chief of the Centers for Mental Health Services said, this is the first time we have funded grants where every single grant had positive outcomes. That has never, ever happened in the history of SAMHSA. Well, I thought that's pretty damn cool. So we'll take that. So Ingrid says, we'd like to do a challenge to you. So if we gave you schools we picked out, and they're going to be reasonably attacked. They're not in life support at this point. But could you walk in, do this thing, and show results in 3 months? I said, hell yes, we can do that. So we did say we don't work for the government for free. So you got a case to do this, and they did. And we went about this, and we had a training in Boston, and we also went out in the field to all of these sites. The people who came to Boston, those were going to be our PAX partners on site, so we wanted to make sure that we were able to work with them tidily. And then we had this video made of what happened.
Goals that you have?
We went to a training meeting first where they were very explicit in telling us how to do the games. We watched videotapes, the instructors modeled for us. We had time to ask questions. When we came back to our classroom, the instructors came and helped us kick off the program. So it was very comfortable. It was an easy thing to do.
When we first went in the classrooms, some of our classrooms, the spleens were just off the chart. I think one class even had about 500 spleens in the 15-minute time frame that we were counting, which was quite a lot.
In one particular class, I think I counted maybe 800 spleens in that 15-minute process. And the teacher, I noticed that her enthusiasm about teaching was her motivation for teaching was low.
Yes, when Rachel Long, my coach, came to me, she did a data collection, a baseline. And she showed me how many spleens I had. It was like 300 and something spleens. And I was like, yeah, that's about right.
And just the first week that we implemented the kernels, we saw the spleens go, from 500 to 250.
I don't see everybody's eyes.
And so each week after that, the teachers would introduce an additional kernel. So by the time we got to full implementation with the game, that same class was having 9 spleens total.
All right, so give yourselves a pat on the back. Show each other some love. Okay.
Once we introduced the cues and kernels to our first class, it was very evident that we saw a difference. We've been collecting data once a week since we started the project. Within 4 weeks, we saw that number drop to maybe a third. We are down below double digits now in all the classrooms.
I think when you see it that way, when you see a real live experience of a teacher who was pulling her hair and looking like she just for 2 o'clock to hit the bar to enjoying her role, I thought that was big.
It started out as a pilot with just 6 schools. And just recently we've expanded to 19 schools. And it's catching. People are getting excited about it. They keep, what is that? And I want some of that.
I heard other teachers look around and ask me, what is that? What are they talking about? What's a spleen? And all of those kinds of things. So yes, it is very much so going viral in our school in a good way.
I'm a bilingual teacher, so teaching them that vocabulary, it wasn't only new to my students that were only Spanish speakers, but it was a new vocabulary for all of them. So, using spleen, it wasn't only new to them, but it was new to all the kids. So it was easier for them to learn spleen, to learn PACS, and they became part of the community as well.
This is my 19th year of teaching, and this by far has been the most impactful thing I've used in the classroom. It's long lasting, it's structured, you have data to back up what you're doing.
Now today, when we do this, we're gonna play another PAX game, our 3rd game of the day. What would be some spleens? What would be a spleen? Carlos?
Like getting out of your seat.
Okay. If you look at the beginning of the year, all the spleens that I was recording and compare them to now, you'll see that there's a gigantic decrease. The length of time that kids can work independently since starting this game, we started at 3 minutes, we're up to 20 minutes now. It's made a huge difference.
Because you don't know what's right or wrong. So, like, if you do something you're not supposed to do, you say, like, team 3, that's a spleen for getting up more than once.
We are going to play our PAX game as we're using the restroom and as we're getting to gym. So I want you to tell me what would be PAX behavior. Noah.
Watching where you're walking.
Watching where you're walking, staying in that PAX line. Those are good PAX behaviors.
Kelly, not talk to the person behind you in the hallway.
All right, now we're going to talk about some spleens as we're traveling from here to gym. Zane, please, no running in the hall would definitely be a spleen. Hayden.
Jump up and hit
By the way, whatever one they said,
Jump up and hit the wall,
that's
that would be
probably
a
something
spleen.
that they do.
I like
that it works on the positive, that you look for their good behavior, you look for, or the behaviors you, as we say we want more of. And so I focus, oh, I'd like to see that. And I like the fact that it doesn't focus on one student, but just generalizes, oh, I see a behavior that we shouldn't be doing right now. Let's see less of that.
So within the PAX game, they are monitoring their own behavior and they are controlling their own behavior, and they're finding out how they're doing with that. Can I maintain this expected PAX behavior for how long? Right now, everyone is a PAX learner. Your bodies are settled, like we said. Your voices are off and you're looking at the speaker, and our mystery PAX person is doing an outstanding job for you. And when I don't, and I'm spleeming, what are my spleens and what behavior do I need to change? And they're held accountable to that 3 times a day or more. And that accountability was missing. That leads them to become independent and in control of themselves.
The self-regulation is a better predictor of first grade reading scores than phonemic awareness. And so if they don't have these, they're not going to, if they don't have the self-regulation, they're not going to do well on the Common Core standards.
Every student in my class passed the reading. Let me start there. They passed the reading benchmark, and it was 73 questions. I had 6 to exceed, and the rest of them met. I have 20 kids in my classroom. That's ADHD that I said before, 504s, RTIs, everyone passed the reading. Okay, what I need for you to do is, let me go over to Granny Wacky Prizes and see what we won again. The more you play, the more time on task they are.
It's the student stopping and thinking. It's the student making those conscious decisions.
They now ask us to play PAX games because they like the feeling they get when they are playing, and the rewards, and just feeling that power and just feeling proud of themselves all the time. They notice when our classroom is too noisy, and they'll ask us to play PAX games so we can quiet it down and get everyone settled again.
We're now going to move into our lesson on the carpet. Listen carefully so that you know what you need to look and sound like as a PAX person transitioning. Let's see if we can get there by our count to 11. 1, 2, 3.
When we weren't playing a game, it was like some people were doing the right thing, then others were doing not the right thing. Then after we started, everybody's been doing the right thing.
The good behavior game has absolutely been embraced in this at the school site in this community. It's something that we definitely never would have imagined that something as easy as playing a game in the classroom would create such great results.
Okay. Simon says, hands on your hips. Simon says, hands on your shoulders.
The data that talks about the reduction in suspensions, the reduction in expulsions, the reduction in the amount of students receiving mental health therapy is something that absolutely should be everyone's goal. The good behavior game, again, is something that we really didn't have to dedicate a whole lot of time to for it to show the positive results. It just happened.
I've seen this game played during an intense math lesson, and to see that many students, and we have large classes, to see that many students focus.
Let's see PAX hands, everyone.
And have their eyes on the teacher. I can't wait to see their success. I know that we're gonna have higher test scores. I know that we're gonna have happier kids. I know that we're gonna have happier parents because of this.
A PAX leader is someone that is good at PAX. And also a PAX leader is when you make other people better and you make yourself better. You also make the world better.
I'm going to have to skip because we lost a bunch of time today. So what I want to show you here is this graph. So you can measure classroom pressure like you can measure blood pressure. And so here is the sort of metaphor for that. And you can see when you get up to a couple hundred spleens of disturbing disruptive behaviors per 15 minutes, you're going to have hell in that classroom. And you can see that in the red lines. Those are all the baselines of all of those 8 districts. And typically there were 5 to 10 different school classrooms. The kernels were implemented with the language, and you see about a 50% reduction. And then after playing the game for a month, you see at least half again of a reduction in those problematic behaviors. Those are the predictors. Those are the indicators of like blood pressure that says these kids, those teachers are going to be happier, healthier over a long time. We are now collecting the data from Hopkins for our children who are age 35 and their children, and looking at that. We already know that it reduces adverse childhood experiences. I cannot go through the rest of this to say, but I'm happy to talk further with you, because we have PACS tools that now, thanks Carmen Irving, mesh with the classroom things and then spread out to the community, to families, to caregivers, to clinicians, so that we can put a whole architecture in place of extremely low cost, very effective strategies, well proven, to get away from this epidemic. And that's what we're going to have to do. We will never, ever be able to treat our way out of it. The medication is showing that we can't do that. And I know as a therapist, you know, I could only handle so many really terrific kids, on about 3 at a time, to do something. Thank you very much.